Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Built in Ohio, the Ohio X podcast, where we're talking with and about the people, companies, and ideas building out our state's tech hub and this tech opportunity that we are seeing. And so we have a very special guest today calling and talking to us from the worldwide headquarters, I'm guessing, of Path Robotics. But Alex, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And, are you at HQ today?
Yes. Yeah, worldwide. I don't know about that, but I am here in Columbus, Ohio. We have about 200,000 square feet of manufacturing space right in Hilliard. And this is where all of our people come to work every day. I'm in a Zen booth, so not the most exciting background, but
That's all right. You all have been kind enough to open up your doors a few times to the community. Sometimes for other groups that I've gotten to be part of. I joined a customer day that you all had, which was pretty great. And
yeah.
you guys did a road show for Ohio X folks. And I'll say that for anyone out there that ever gets an opportunity to go check out what they're doing and what they're building at Path, do it. It's big, it's impressive. And to say the least, Alex, we need more of it in Ohio. So
Couldn't agree more.
I love it. So, Path doing great stuff, AI, robots, welding shortage. What drew you to the company? What was it that captured your attention? Because you have a fascinating background. And I guess maybe before we get to that, just kind of quickly you've been all over. You've been working for some really big tech companies in some big cities. What kind of drew you to Columbus and the Path story?
Yeah. So I'm a New Yorker. If you can't tell from my accent, grew up in New York, and then I moved to Columbus about 6 years ago. Was in the city before then in New York City working for. I spent 6 years at Spotify, really like growing recruiting there in the early days. It's funny to think of Spotify today being a startup, but it truly was. It was about 50 people in the U.S. when I joined in 2012, and then moved over to Facebook and Instagram supporting their recruiting in New York City as well. And I would say, yeah, huge shift going from a large tech company like Facebook to when I joined Path 5 years ago, a 25-person Series A startup. And I love thinking back to that time. And really what drew me is, the founders, they still are, they're just solving a real problem, and that's at the core, and they're doing it, and their solution is through bleeding edge technology. So as a recruiting and people professional, you want to be working at a company that people want to work at. It is not pulling teeth to recruit people to a company like Spotify, like Facebook, and now like Path, in the sense that we were using AI 5 years ago, and that was part of our pitch, collecting data, using computer vision, and robotics, a space that a lot of people want to be in. So I think that was what was like especially compelling for me, was just meeting the founders, and just hearing about their drive and their mission to solve like a core problem. And then secondly, I think the founding team, what's really unique is they actually truly at their core believe that our people are our competitive advantage. So as a people professional, seeing that you have founders that are going to really put their money where their mouth is in that sense, it was really easy to get the support to put in a lot of programming, benefits, parental leave program, whatever, to support this mission to attract and retain the best talent, which was critical to me. And I saw that through them. And then for me, more personally, Path is actually solving a recruiting problem, which is aligned to my core function. I mean, we're attacking a labor shortage that is hitting so many manufacturers. They can't find the welders they need. So just growing up as a recruiter and then leading recruiting functions, I love that we're attacking a problem that's really near and dear to my heart.
And before we get more deeply into the Path work, what was it like going from a Spotify to a Facebook, which, different companies, but, kind of, in a similar spirit of online, digital based, and then transitioning also away from New York City to Columbus, to work at Path, more in the hardware, robotics, all of that. What was that like for you just as a tech professional, tech executive?
Yeah, it is. I think more, it was just, I had spent 6 years kind of growing up or starting my career really at Spotify. And so it's just like, getting more and more efficient and scaling and more process over those years, then going and seeing true scale and true operational rigor and all of the um, just more a much more established business, a much more established product, and products, I should say, and things that were keeping me up at night at Spotify just weren't even on my plate
Mhm.
at Facebook. So that transition, just going to such a larger company and really seeing how true efficiency works. They're very data driven recruiting organizations. So I just learned a lot of the fundamentals, I think, of like true talent acquisition there. And then coming to Path, it was just completely going back even earlier to where the company was from like a company maturity standpoint. But the highlight or the draw for me was the opportunity to take the learnings I had and implement them and build them from scratch here. So I think that was really exciting. I think I mean, there's plenty of employees here who talk about their connection, their personal connection to manufacturing or to welding. Growing up in New York, I didn't have that. I didn't know someone who was a welder. So coming in and having the opportunity to really learn a completely new space. This is not a consumer app that I have been using personally and love. This is truly was a learning curve for me, and I think just seeing us go from 0 to 1, like when I joined, we had not launched to any customers yet, so it was pre-revenue, pre really having a stable solidified product. So just seeing that transition to now we're in 200,000 square feet, we have huge robotic cells using lifting huge or welding huge parts, was just a totally different different space than I was used to, which presented a ton of great learnings, but a whole unique set of challenges for me personally.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, and you mentioned a moment ago when you joined, I think you said it was a $25 million Series A or 25 people Series A, maybe.
Yeah,
And certainly it's grown quite a bit, a few other rounds of funding and making some big headlines in that space. But as you're laying out, you have grown that team from that small space, 6 years, I believe you said. You know, what has that been like and kind of that evolution of even just the company and going from you mentioned Spotify to something much bigger to something smaller and then you're kind of scaling again. How has that been as, the executive leading everything from the onboarding to the recruiting to, managing the team and the culture? I just have to imagine it's been a fun whirlwind.
yeah. um, I think it's been I feel really grateful and fortunate that our founders, are partnering with
Mhm.
me and the whole leadership team to really build the company that they, envision, and attract and being able to truly set it up in the way to attract and retain top talent. I think that's really critical. So but yeah, putting every single thing in place, like I said, things that you wouldn't even think of that were maybe table stakes at a more established company, at a startup, just don't exist. So just
Mhm.
setting up and establishing all of that infrastructure, all of that process, everything like practically that we had to do, you know, establishing what are our core values, how do we want the culture to look, who are the type of people, how do they show up
Mhm.
behaviorally that we want to attract, let alone the actual skills or competencies that we need to recruit. Really just creating the drumbeat of the company. How are we going to communicate? How are we going to get everyone aligned? What is our mission? Just all of those things that if you're at any more established company, you don't even think about. We didn't have. I would say there's just like it was a lot of training as well. I think this was very common even in the early days at Spotify. There's a lot of people who often are early employees that kind of grow with the company that likely become managers, but they have never been managers before. So that was something that like identified early on is just how, and even our founders are their first time founders, so just how do we like add that, like how do they become managers, what does that mean to actually lead people, motivate people, coach people. So adding in just a lot of training, um, how to interview, all of those things. Just setting up that entire infrastructure to be able to grow was like my main focus, and
Yeah.
continues to be my main focus
Sure.
this whole time.
Well, and it's funny you mention that because I think we so often take for granted all those little pieces that are parts of companies or just anything in life of, especially pre Gen AI, which Gen AI hasn't been around that long. And so,
Yeah.
everything from like onboarding processes to handbooks to welcome emails to like, just everything, like all those million little touch points in between from start to finish. It's like, one, someone created that, and not many of us have seen it from the beginning. Where like you're having to do it, but you're also having to scale it at the same time. It's one thing to do it for a small business that's kind of still around that same employee headcount, but to do it for like a scaling company, I can imagine it was just probably you're pulling on a thread, and then you got 15 more threads to pull on as part of it, and the growth of it all.
Yeah, and I think there's, it's always a matter of like timing. And I think I took
Mhm.
some of the learnings of, ooh, I wish this had been implemented earlier, and tried to implement it. Something we were really focused on, a big learning was like, how do we enable like professional growth without having kind of falling into the trap a lot of startups fall into, I think, of having your most technical people become people managers. They're kind of the strongest performers, and a natural progression is to kind of get promoted into becoming a manager, but they're two totally different strengths and skill sets. So we kind of established like early on like a leveling framework so people can have that career growth, and separate tracks to kind of promote the people solving the most technical problems who can remain individual contributors and continue to make an impact technically on the product, like our most important component of this company, and then also be able to develop and grow people into people managers who are like cultivating our most important asset, our team. So
Yeah.
that was just one thing that we established pretty early, which I get a lot of questions about when's that right time, kind of from peer group, of when's that right time
Mhm.
to implement that.
Yeah, and so both Path and you have also been part of this interesting kind of growth of the Ohio and the Columbus, tech sector, where there was kind of a thesis, and you can date it back to Drive Capital coming into town and a portfolio company and all of that. But what has it kind of been like over the past years when it comes to talent, both for like the people you're recruiting, or kind of just thinking of Ohio, Columbus in particular for Path, since this is where you're headquartered, as a place where there is a growing tech sector that maybe 10 or 15 years ago it would be a little bit different, or maybe even a lot different, trying to do what you're doing now. How has that been like, of just kind of part, you're part of this growth, and I feel like we get a bunch of the big names, the Googles and the Metas, but it's kind of a different space than kind of the startup space, of course.
Yeah.
And so just what has that been like, of the evolution that you have seen both personally and then with the business of Columbus and Ohio kind of finding its place on the tech map?
Yeah. I would say it's interesting. When I joined in 2020, there was, I mean, it was during COVID. It felt to me like there was more of a growing tech scene, and I say that to mean there were other startups here, largely thanks to Drive, and just in general, there was like a startup community. We had like a cohort of other people leaders, and we would get together, and I think we started to build that company. And I think just with the evolution of remote work and hybrid, that ecosystem, I feel like still exists, but it has definitely dwindled instead of grown. And that's certainly, I think, just been an interesting challenge for us. I think being a startup and all of the kind of complexity that goes with that is a challenge in itself. Similarly, working at a manufacturing company with a hardware product, and everything that's challenging about manufacturing processes is really complicated. And then we are marrying those two and kind of living both. So there's not too many other companies here that kind of fit into both of those buckets in terms of talent. And like I said, I think in addition, just a lot of those core companies that I would say we were pulling talent from have gone remote, or
Mhm.
have moved their headquarters, or it had a successful exit. So it feels like that talent ecosystem was kind of booming-ish and then kind of dwindled, and now with like Anduril coming in and some other development, I'm hoping and excited to see us as a Columbus like tech epicenter continue to grow.
Yeah, and it is interesting with the, the COVIDness of it all, and especially in the kind of the soft pure software where they're not doing hardware, as well, that there does seem to be a pretty strong kind of remote first shift that we have seen, and I know a lot of the bigger companies are requiring people back into the office, and but it still seems a lot of the that startups that maybe before COVID would have all been local based or in one city for their whole teams are definitely kind of more spread out, whether it's remote or kind of remote first with like half their team here, half their team in other places. And then there's always the whole thing of like, what is Gen AI doing to, the need for some of kind of the software skills, and can you hire less people? Because so it is interesting, and it can feel like that where like there's all this stuff and then it's like, oh, well, they're the only one here, or there's two people here and they have four people all over the place. And so it's just such an interesting shift. And, I don't know what the future kind of holds, where obviously the big companies like people, back in the office now, it seems, but for smaller companies, it seems like a lot of them have really enjoyed and preferred that. But of course, in your space, like you have to have people on site. And so like manufacturing, life sciences, biotech, like you have to have an in-person component. And, so it's just so interesting to kind of see how it's all playing out.
Yeah, I mean, we have kind of been in person the entire
Mhm.
time. Of course, when COVID was really bad in the early days, of course, we didn't have people coming in, but I think we've really stayed strong with that kind of framework of we say we're like Columbus first. That means you're spending the majority of your time in the office. There are, of course, certain teams where, maybe go to market or supply chain teams that require a lot of travel. We're going to allow either remote work, but we have a physical product in a manufacturing space. So even it just we're roughly half of our workforce physically does need to be here. So just from like a cohesive culture standpoint, we have always had people come into the office most days, which is really positive for some people. I think there's plenty of people that work full time from home and their sweats that are like craving that human collaboration and connection. So I think we kind of draw on the strength, but of course it's not for everyone. People like the benefits of working from home, and we try to just offer flexibility to afford people the balance, but overall really prioritize being in person.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned, the necessity of it because you're in the manufacturing space, and, you're doing robotics and hardware. And so I'd love to kind of talk about that because, at least from someone who isn't in the space every day, you look across the country and kind of, where there maybe are robotics or advanced manufacturing kind of clusters or hubs. And certainly, just like anything, San Francisco is a huge one, but it seems like Boston might be another one. Pittsburgh, it seems,
Yeah.
just talking to some folks there. How does Ohio stack up? How does Columbus stack up? Because at least from the outside, it seems like, and why I love what you all do, that there's a real growth opportunity from the legacy, the history, the tradition we have in advanced manufacturing, that we build things, and then the fact that Path exists, a couple others, but there's a lot of green space. Andril, you mentioned coming to the state for some of those reasons, but it seems like there's a real kind of blue ocean opportunity of like, hey, like this is something we could all get behind and help kind of really put us on the map for what you all do.
Yeah, I would truly love if this is a call to action for other companies to come and do what we're doing and partner with, of course, to bring more talented people into the ecosystem. I mean, our sort of mission here is we're building the robotic workforce for all of manufacturing. And when you think about manufacturing, being in Columbus and being in Ohio is the prime location. We're very close to a lot of our customers. And we're kind of in the heartland of America and the heart of manufacturing. So I think in that regards, and the proximity to our customers is like a very compelling reason to be here. I think there's like, when we look at sort of the talent pool, while there aren't other startups really currently in this exact space, there's a ton of other manufacturing companies. In addition, we have a ton of support from Ohio State, who has great programs, great talent coming out of there. I mean, the dean for the College of Engineering has a robotics background and has been very supportive there. So, just in general, I do feel optimistic about the growth of this market, just seeing kind of like newer talent kind of joining. We've had a lot of success bringing in kind of master's degree, PhD candidates coming into Path as their first position, and they're coming from really neighboring top programs like CMU, for example, or Georgia Tech, and then having a huge impact immediately, especially within our R&D org. So within robotics, but also the advancements we're doing with AI and computer vision. So I am really hopeful that Ohio can continue to grow and be a place that you think of when you think of robotics. Some drawback that we have is we'll find a really awesome candidate located elsewhere, and they're aligned to our mission and they're aligned to the work, but they're hesitant to actually relocate their family. If this doesn't work out for on their end or our end, there's not a ton of other companies that someone can go to that they can just move on. Oh, I'll go to the next kind of robotics startup down the road, like maybe you can in Boston or San Francisco. And that's a huge kind of consideration for candidates that we hear a lot. So building out this space would truly be incredible. And like I said, we're really excited to have Intel, to have Anduril, and just more big tech companies coming here.
Yeah, especially, all of those are so exciting. And Anduril in particular, you look at half the people that are there, and they were working at Palantir 2 years ago. And
Right.
Before Palantir, they were at the CMUs or the Georgia Techs of the world. And so, I hope that's one of those kind of stories that we all get to tell in a few years of, look at all these amazing people that came to the state or decided to stay in the state or decided to choose robotics versus something else because of something like that. And then they worked there for a couple of years. And then, the spirit of entrepreneurship that you see in that company in particular and a lot of others, that then they go spin out and test their kind of, unique thesis in the space. And so hopefully that's one. But, you mentioned talking with a bunch of these, really incredible candidates at some of the top schools. Is there anything that kind of stands out that on what they look for, that as we think about this Ohio opportunity, that whether that's part of the call to action or if it's just like, no, they just want great jobs and they want great opportunities and they want 5 or 6 to choose from. And but as you're talking with them, like what are some of the things that they're mentioning as, top considerations, for their careers as they're looking to start out post, PhD or master's programs?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, our kind of value proposition now is that we are solving a real world problem and we have real customers. So I think that's really exciting. I don't know how at what like point in the career trajectory people are realizing it, but there's a lot of amazing companies that are still the product life cycle just takes so long, and there's so much R&D before you actually go to market. So I think a really compelling advantage for us is that our product is in the market. We're collecting real data from real customers, and training our models and making our products smarter as a result of that. And so I think if you are in the robotic space, you're in the AI space, that is extremely compelling that you're using real data, not simulation. So so that has really been our value proposition, and that's really been sort of honed in from the feedback we're getting. And I think a big learning we've had conversely is just that we definitely optimized as we've scaled over the past 2 years. We need to bring in more experienced talent, people that have seen these things before, have done this, can add their expertise. And that is still a core like tenet of our overall talent acquisition strategy. You do need people who have experience, who can up level the team. But I think specifically when it comes to AI, that is so nascent that the people that are coming out of the program today versus 5 years ago know even more. So we've been really trying to, form relationships with universities to be able to attract that kind of talent coming right out of programs.
That's great. Well, I could ask about a million more questions on this, but to keep us on track here,
Yeah.
we'll pivot towards our kind of rapid fire kind of questions at the end,
Okay.
which the answers don't have to be short, but they're fun because we ask all of our guests these, and so it's great to hear the perspective of someone in robotics in Columbus, or a CIO in Cleveland, or a researcher in Cincinnati. So the first one is, what's one people related problem that you're currently working to solve, or a challenge that, you're kind of, working through?
Yeah. I would say this is ongoing, but it's truly how to measure performance in the best way that doesn't feel draining, like we're doing traditional performance management, since we are cutting edge, and
Mhm.
we don't want the kind of old school performance management process that people think, but really trying to find a way both for retention of our top performers and having people feel like they're on a top performing team, and to give managers the tools to give feedback and coach up people that need additional support. So just overall, like increasing talent density and the right way to do it that feels out of the box and different.
I like that. That's great. Second one, what's a favorite read, listen, or watch? So it could be a book, a podcast, or a show.
Oh man, I should have prepared for these. I am an avid reader. I read a ton. I would say I definitely try to balance like a really fabulous book with a business book, but my main genre is definitely beach reads, which I won't call out. But favorite read is was Demon Copperhead from this
Okay.
past year.
Okay, great. That's great. Third one is, and this is perfect for you. Someone's coming to visit. So say it's one of those candidates, or someone you're trying to, recruit, or whatever that looks like. Where would you take them in town for maybe a coffee, if you have a coffee spot for them, and then a meal as well. So a good meal to kind of show off everything that Central Ohio, Columbus have to offer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say my my I'm from New York and I love bagels, and I would say the best bagel place was Blocks in Bexley. It's now Fox, but excellent bagels. So I always like to say, even though we moved from New York, we still have great bagels.
Mhm.
And my favorite restaurant here is Ocean Club. It doesn't really show off Columbus, but I think Easton is amazing, and I think their food is just fantastic.
Yeah. Especially summer, and nice out, like evenings, you can walk around and it's still, it's not cold and chilly. So like, yeah, you're
Yeah.
outdoors, you can walk around, see all the lights. Like, yeah, I agree.
I'm so impressed with the restaurant scene, honestly, in
Yeah.
Columbus. We're getting so many. I mean, our whole team, we just did a team dinner at Cento or
Oh,
Cento,
nice.
however you say, in German Village. Just
Yep.
like really great new
Yeah.
restaurants coming on the scene all the time.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy of just like, you almost have to pick that your neighborhoods now of like which one, because, it's like you could talk about Easton. It's like, if you haven't been to Easton in forever, you wouldn't know what's there. Or German Village, there's always stuff popping up. So, yeah, a couple great ones as well. And so, final one, without work, involved, how are you spending a perfect Saturday? What does it look like, if, from wake up to go to bed? What are you doing?
Oh man. Well, I have two children. I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So, spending the day with them in whatever capacity, going to the pool, going at one of their million activities that I feel like is about to ramp back up in the fall.
Mhm.
So, carpooling, ideal Saturday. But other things I love to do, just take a long walk with friends. I feel so fortunate. Bexley's such a great like walking area and great community. So getting to do that, playing golf with my husband, eating a great dinner, and maybe even I've gotten really into mahjong. Maybe like an 80-year-old woman here, but the tile game. So would love to
Okay.
end the day doing that.
Okay. Great answer.
Unless it's a Buckeye home Saturday, then I'm obviously at the shoe.
Yep. Yep. So, and that's coming up quickly too. So,
I know, can't wait.
Alex, this has been fantastic. We in the show notes will put your LinkedIn if people want to follow along, the Path information if they want to check out Path Robotics. But just thank you to you and your team for building in such an important space that our country needs, and our region is so good at, and you're kind of making all this possible again for a state that has built things for so many years. You're doing it in this new era with amazing technologies and amazing teams. So just thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for all of your support of Path and everything you're doing to help make us successful.
Well, thanks, Alex. And everyone listening and watching, thank you so much. Another great episode of Built in Ohio. So again, scroll down to the show notes, check out Alex and her work, check out Path, their website, their LinkedIn, give them a follow. Also a quick plug. I know you all are doing your robotics meetups. Maybe I have the name of it, but you're bringing people in, talking robotics, getting smart people together. So that's something I know you guys are really doing and started up somewhat recently, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, our second sort of one, our real world robotic speaker system is tomorrow night. So
okay, very cool.
Come
awesome.
check it out for anyone who's willing.
Come check it out. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great day. We'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.